Hey, Focus learners, welcome back to another explainer. Today, we're going to unpack one of the most incredibly fast, chaotic, and consequential periods in modern history. We're talking about the 18-month domino effect that abruptly ended British rule in India. We'll be using primary handwritten source notes to trace exactly how a centuries-old empire dismantled itself in just a year and a half. So get ready, because we are absolutely on a ticking clock today.
Okay, let's dive straight into this. To really understand this rapid escalation, we're going to follow 6 clear chronological steps straight from our source material. We're going from the RIN Mutiny all the way through to independence and the immediate aftermath.
Section 1. The RIN Mutiny. This brings us to the very first major fracture in British confidence. The year is 1946.
Just to anchor ourselves, take a look at how tightly packed these events are. We're charting a course from February 1946 right up to August 1947. These are massive, continent-shifting historical dominoes, and they are falling incredibly fast, within just a tiny 18-month window.
So, our source notes kick things off by highlighting a critical shift in power dynamics. Historically, you see the British had sky-high confidence in the Indian Air Force and Navy. They consider them to be the most disciplined units, completely backed by loyalty and the support of princely states, as well as political groups like the Muslim League. At this point, British foreign policy was basically coasting toward a slow, highly ceremonial exit. But then, February 1946 hits and they face a massive setback. The soldiers of the INS Talwar, stationed over at Bombay, decided to just completely revolt against the British.
So what caused this sudden explosion? Honestly, it was rooted in deep, daily indignities. The mutiny was sparked primarily by ongoing racial discrimination in dress, diet, and just general everyday behavior. But the immediate trigger? The arrest of an Indian soldier, B.C. Dutt, simply for chanting an anti-British slogan. In response, the rebels took some incredibly striking visual action. They tore down the Union Jack, they unfurled the flags of both the Indian National Congress and the Muslim League, and literally painted "Quit India" across the walls. And this rebellion gained massive traction too. It was actively supported by strikes organized by the Bombay labor and railway unions. These allied groups expanded the demands. They wanted fair trials for Indian National Army soldiers and the immediate withdrawal of Indian troops from Indonesia.
Now, what's really interesting here is the stark contrast between the soldiers out in the streets and the political leadership sitting in the rooms of power. You'd probably expect the major political parties to rally behind the mutiny, right? Well, according to our sources, they didn't. Neither the INC nor the Muslim League supported the RIN Mutiny. In fact, only the Communist Party of India did. Mahatma Gandhi actively criticized the revolt, arguing that it would jeopardize future relations with England just as they were attempting the smooth transfer of power. Ultimately, political heavyweights Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel and Muhammad Ali Jinnah literally had to board the ship and persuade the rebellious sailors to surrender. But even though the mutiny ended, it massively accelerated the colonial exit strategy.
Section 2. The Cabinet Mission Plan. Spurred into action by the mutiny, the British government realized they needed a constitutional solution, and they needed it yesterday.
In March 1946, London dispatched a high-level 3-member delegation to India. Our notes identify them as P.C. Lawrence, the Secretary of State for India, A.V. Alexander, the Navy Chief, and Stafford Cripps, the President of the Board of Trade. Their main goal? To propose an all-India federation that would include both British Indian provinces and princely states.
To facilitate this giant transition, the Cabinet Mission proposed a Constituent Assembly, and I really want you to focus on this number, 389. That was the proposed total membership for the Assembly. This body was going to be made up of 292 elected members from British Indian provinces, 93 nominated members from princely states, and 4 from chief commissionary provinces. The math behind this was monumental, but straightforward. Constituencies were drawn up so that one representative would come from every 10 lakh. That's 1 million people.
But here's where the plan hit an absolute brick wall. The most controversial decision of the Cabinet Mission was grouping the Indian states into 3 specific categories. Group A covered areas like UP, Bombay, and Madras. Group B included Punjab and Sindh, and Group C covered Bengal and Assam. Now, following the elections for this Constituent Assembly, the Indian National Congress won the highest number of seats, which, by the way, notably included 15 women members like Sarojini Naidu and Hansa Mehta. However, the Muslim League flat-out rejected the provisions of the Cabinet Mission. They demanded an entirely separate Constituent Assembly for Pakistan.
Section 3. Forming the Interim Government. By the late summer of 1946, the political stalemate over the Cabinet Mission started bleeding out of the negotiation rooms and into the streets, setting a highly volatile stage for a new transitional government.
The source notes record that following their rejection of the cabinet mission, the Muslim League began provoking communal violence, which culminated in the celebration of Direct Action Day on August 16, 1946. This triggered severe, heartbreaking violence across all of India, with the absolute worst of the bloodshed happening in Bengal. And this deeply tragic, tense atmosphere was the exact backdrop against which the new government had to somehow be formed.
Notice just how awkwardly this interim government was pieced together on September 2, 1946. Over on one side, Viceroy Wavell invited the leaders of the INC, with J.L. Nehru taking the oath as Vice President of India. On the flip side, the Muslim League initially boycotted the government entirely, sticking to their demand for a separate assembly. After some intense persuasion, they finally agreed to join, bringing 5 members into Nehru's cabinet, including Liaquat Ali Khan, who became the finance minister. But get this, to facilitate their entry, 3 existing INC members, Ali Zahir, Shafat Hamad Khan, and Sarat Chandra Bose, actually had to resign just to make room. And even then, our notes indicate that the top leaders of the Muslim League didn't participate in the government, remaining engaged instead in sponsoring the ongoing communal violence.
Section 4. The Mountbatten Plan. Tensions are now at an absolute boiling point. Moving into early 1947, the British government realized their dream of a slow, ceremonial exit was just a complete fantasy. They needed an immediate, accelerated exit strategy.
This extreme urgency resulted in Attlee's declaration on February 20, 1947. British Prime Minister Clement Attlee stood up in Parliament and declared that Britain would officially leave India before June 1948. To oversee this super-compressed timeline, he appointed Lord Mountbatten as the new Viceroy of India, and Mountbatten hit the ground running, launching into a rapid series of intense conversations with key leaders like Gandhi, Patel, Nehru, and Jinnah.
So the crucial point is what those frantic conversations actually produced. The Mountbatten Plan, also known as the 3rd of June Plan, it laid out 4 rapid, irreversible steps. First, the creation of 2 independent federations, India and Pakistan, within the British Commonwealth. Second, the assemblies of Bengal and Punjab would endorse a partition plan to divide their provinces based on demographic. Third, referendums would be conducted in the northwest and the Sylhet district of Assam. And finally, a boundary commission would be set up under a man named Cyril Radcliffe to actually draw the new borders. Think about what that means for a second. Drawing literal, irreversible lines that will dictate the home, safety, and identity of millions of people.
Section 5. Drawing the Radcliffe Line. And this leads us to what is arguably the most practically impossible logistical task in modern governance: drawing a physical border straight through a massively populated subcontinent.
Cyril Radcliffe oversaw 2 commissions, one for Punjab and one for Bengal. Each contained representatives from both the INC and the Muslim League. Their job was to divide not just the physical land, but the official assets of India equally between the 2 new nations. And look at the wildly complex demarcation criteria they were supposed to balance: the religious majority of the population, administrative convenience, the existing transport and communication lines, and broader economical and geographical factors. Balancing even one of those metrics is difficult, right? Balancing all 4 across thousands of miles? That is absolutely staggering.
Now, how much time do you think Radcliffe was given to complete this continent-altering task? A few years? 6 months? Nope. Radcliffe got exactly 5 weeks. 5 weeks to define the future of hundreds of millions of people. Because nothing says careful geopolitical planning quite like a 5-week deadline to carve up an entire subcontinent.
Section 6. Independence and the Aftermath. This relentless countdown forces us into the chaotic climax of July and August 1947.
And this brilliantly illustrates the sheer panic of the whole timeline. Lord Mountbatten had presented the 3rd of June plan to British PM Attlee, and after debate, the Indian Independence Act was formally passed by the British Parliament on July 18, 1947. India would become officially independent on August 15th, but here's the catch. Cyril Radcliffe didn't present his final boundary report until August 17th. That is 2 full days after independence. The immediate aftermath of announcing these borders into a vacuum of new power resulted in mass migration, a horrific communal violence refugee crisis, and planted the very seeds for the ongoing problem of Kashmir.
What officially ended here was an era defined by a very specific term found in our source notes: paramountcy. This essentially means a stage in which the ruling power exercises complete control over both the foreign and domestic affairs of the ruled. With the stroke of a pen, the British Parliament had officially ended British paramountcy in India.
as we look back at this 18-month sprint, from a naval mutiny to a hastily drawn border, it leaves us with a massive historical question to ponder. When a ruling imperial power accelerates its exit strategy into a mere year and a half, does the end of paramountcy actually guarantee peace for the newly independent nations, or does it simply redraw the lines of conflict for generations to come? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Focused learners, keep questioning the history on the page, and I'll see you in the next one.